What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to give you guys my full review of Ghost of Yotei. I'm finally done. It did take me a while, a couple of weeks, I guess, but 46 hours, just slightly over 46 hours, and I got the Platinum Trophy. As I was going through this game, it became very clear to me that I needed to do everything. I guess technically, there's some of those items. I have 10 out of 30, so there's a few things here and there. I probably 95%ed the game, not 100%. But got the Platinum Trophy, beat the game, did the story, and beat that last night. So I'm feeling good. I've let things kind of sit in my head and try to come up with some thoughts for you guys. The game is spectacular. It really, I don't want to give away my top 2, 3, 4, 5 games of the year. I'll be doing videos at the end of the year on that. But let's just say it shows up there, okay? Ghost of Yotei is easily one of my favorite games of the year. And I also just think one of, quite literally, the better games of this year. It is an amazing ride. It really is. Are there some weaknesses? Yeah, there's some things that are not as strong as I would like. We'll talk about that in this video, but just overwhelming. I had so much fun. And I do think the platinum is kind of important too, right? Because I really did do so much. So it's like you could say I overstayed my welcome, and did that drive me away, right? Maybe you can kind of see a flaw in a game when you spend those extra hours in the game trying to go for that platinum. The platinum is a lot of fun, by the way, in this game, but just so much of this game is fun. So much of this game invites you to kind of do it that you don't feel like you are overstaying your welcome, like you've seen everything there is to see. Every shrine, every fox den, every bamboo strike is a blast. So doing those, and the shrines, I think I had 2 shrines was my final trophy. I had to do that. I love them. I think the platforming that's involved in the shrines are miles better than what you got in Ghost of Tsushima, and they kind of stretch it. It's a longer adventure to get to the top of a hill this time around than it was 5 years ago. So even something as, kind of simple and filler, those things kind of are the filler content of this game. They are a blast. They are a lot of fun to do, and they never drove me away in any way. Again, visually, I mean, this might be my favorite game visually. We have had a tremendous year of Hollow Knight and Expedition 33, amongst many, many others, even beyond those 2. But I mean, there's nothing like getting on your horse and just riding over and seeing all of these horses gallop past you, or seeing the birds, or I mentioned this in my early impressions of this game. The flowers and the colors, it looks incredible. And I mean, even the cutscenes when they get really, really close to these characters, their faces. I mean, the game looks unbelievably good. And to know, again, the budget of this thing is less than 100 million. Sucker Punch is not Naughty Dog, but for this game to rival some of the prettiest and best looking games of this entire generation, I think is incredible. It really, hats off to them. The music, just again, the sounds, just hearing these animals and hearing just anything that's going on in this world. The music, when they're doing the tales, right? The kind of the urban or mythic tales, freaking love those. And there's one very, very special one in this game I don't want to spoil. So it nails those 2 departments. Combat is something that I mentioned it was harder in the early impressions video I did. And having played 46 hours, let me tell you, it does get easier. I feel like the more powerful Atsu is, just the overall better experience. And I would say better experience because when you're flowing, when you're parrying, perfect parrying all the time, when you're picking up weapons and freaking whipping them at enemies and doing your dodges and your perfect dodges and switching between weapons, and just when you're kind of combining all of the resources and all of the ways that the game allows you to play, that's where it feels the best. Now, I'm not even perfect at that, but getting off a quick pistol shot, to stagger or kill an enemy is so much fun. To use the bow, and I don't even use the bombs, smoke bombs or any really kind of things like that. I don't even really use my full arsenal, but when you are fighting a large group as the game goes, I feel it feels incredible. It really does. And I mentioned it again in the early impressions, it's a step up from Ghost of Tsushima. It is harder. It is, it's something that you can feel the blades clashing each other, right? You can hear it from the DualSense for sure, but just also kind of the feel of it, like when an enemy goes to lunge at you and you block it even, right? And it kind of slides off your sword. The enemy reacts to it. It really makes it feel real, I guess is kind of the point I'm trying to get. And it really helps, again, elevate the game. So I had an absolute blast with the combat. And I would say, is it harder? I think it's definitely harder. But when they give you all of these things and when you're leveling it all up, and I mean, I had so many resources, kind of the second half of the game, I could level up whatever I wanted, at any point. So I was really just happy with the flow of the game, the flow of the combat is amazing. I mentioned the side stuff. The side stuff in this game is excellent. And if there's anything that this game does so freaking well, it's the environment, like I said. But, obviously a lot's been brought up about the wind and finding locations kind of just on your own, right? I think they do 10 out of 10 job, in that way. But also really making each thing feel unique. I've seen people online talk about that they feel like the side content is better than the main content. Now, I think there's some really cool stuff in the main content. I mean, we'll get to the main story in a second, but I can understand that because everything has a story. A fox den can have a story. A bamboo strike could have a story. Or, like small examples, like there was one time that there's a bamboo strike and I found it before a quest, okay? And I do the bamboo strike. There's a group of people kind of cheering me on, and they leave a mask as a reward. And it's like, oh, that's cool. I picked up the mask. There's like 1,000 customizable, cosmetic things in this game that are so freaking amazing. I love just all the different masks that Atsu can wear and whatnot. But okay, I pick up this mask, and then I go into this inn, and I find out, oh, the inn only lets people in when they have a mask on. And I thought, oh my God, I just got a mask by doing that bamboo strike. Put on the mask, they let me in. And it's like and it's simple, right? I did a bamboo strike and I walked into an inn. I think that was a side mission, honestly. I don't even remember if that was a main mission or not. But that right there is meaning. It's impact to everything that you do. That bamboo strike. Look, bamboo strikes are fun because I like that memorization game. I think it's actually very addicting. It satisfies a part of my brain and a part of my, what I'm looking for out of a video game. But then also, it actually does have an impact because, there's more to it. There's a reward that actually leads something else to happen. And that's not a one and done. I mean, a lot of the side quests are incredible. And I'm talking side missions. The side missions in this game are incredibly diverse. They are very well acted. They are all different from each other. I mean, I complained about that with Ghost of Tsushima, the amount of sameness, not just in like the 500 fox dens that you do, but a lot of it is go to this area, investigate footsteps, follow the footsteps, and then take out enemies. And are you going to do that sometimes here? Yeah. But honestly, I might be able to, it might be less than 10 times that I investigated footsteps. And I can tell you from playing Ghost of Tsushima less than a month ago, you investigate like 100 footsteps in that game. This game, maybe less than 10 times. So it just breaks it up. All that talk that they said going into this game about, they're doing less amounts of these things, but more of them. That's exactly what it is. Getting to a resting spot, right? And doing like the sauna, that you have to get there, and that can be kind of an adventure on its own. Fox dens are more than just following a fox, or I would say maybe the wolf is the only one that's the most standard. You kind of find a wolf hideout, you follow the wolf, and maybe every single time they lead you to a camp of some sort, and you take out a group of enemies. Sometimes you free a wolf, sometimes you don't, and it's just the bonding of the wolf. That is maybe the most like, okay, go here, then do this, then do that. It's the most in line that like you ever do in this game, and it's for a freaking wolf, right? So the wolves, by the way, super, super amazing, but there's just so much to do in this game, and I guess the takeaway is that it really does not get old, okay? Like going for the platinum, I'm like, all right, which thing do I still have to do? There's almost a checklisty kind of vibe when you're doing that, but it's a checklist maybe, but it's also just fun. It's like, oh, I'm missing 2 shrines. That's what I was missing for the platinum. To climb a shrine is actually really fun. I love the platforming. I love swinging with the ropes. I've talked about this before, there's a floatiness to Sucker Punch's games going all the way back to Sly. You can feel it it with like Cole whenever you do like a jump in Infamous, and Jin felt that same way. Atsu feels a little heavier, but she still has a floatiness, especially when you're platforming. It feels very Infamous-like, and I love it. I've always loved the kind of hover floatiness feel that Sucker Punch has. So I found a shrine, and it wasn't like, shoot, okay, I have to do another one of these shrines. It's like, no, I'm excited to do whatever climb that there is to do. Does that make sense? So that's really how I felt about really 9 out of 10 side things in this game. There's bounties. The bounties are tremendous. All these enemies, by the way, all these different bosses, kind of like mini bosses that they put into the game, and even the Yotei 6, the amount of diversity in how they fight is unreal. Like, you are going to fight some enemies that are going to throw moves at you. Yeah, it's the same weapons, okay? Nobody's pulling out a weapon that you've never seen before, all right? But the way that they strike and their move sets, they're actually very different. And when you go to just do a random bounty, when you take out the 4th member of the Yotei 6, like, you are facing a unique challenge each time. And I really respect them for that, because guess what? They did not do that in the first game. Again, that to me is the signs of growth. In the first game, so many duels, like the duel of Jin and his uncle, right, Lord Shimura, at the end of Tsushima was so emotionally powerful, okay? But he fights relatively, the same as everybody else. So maybe a little bit harder, but, it's generally the same kind of stuff. And really, they all do that. Any kind of enemy you face in Ghost of Tsushima, you can take out the move set going in. When you're facing these Yotei 6 members, or some of these bounties, or there's a master that fights you and you have to fight him twice for a trophy, he's difficult, and he will throw some moves at you that you've never seen the move set before. So it just keeps it moving. Again, that kind of challenge and the whole, you haven't seen this yet, but it feels familiar, and yet we're going to try to do something new with it. That is like 90% of this game that I respect so much. And then, well, there's really only 2 other elements, right? I always kind of leave these for the end of any video that I do. Story and characters, okay? Now, this is very tough without getting into spoilers, and I'm going to do a spoiler cast video. It's going to go up tomorrow. So if you want to, stay tuned for that. I want to talk about the ending. I want to talk about like the big, emotional moments. We'll do that in its own video. That's just complete spoilers. But for the purposes of this, what I'll say is I think everything was good. And I think I would label it a good, an 8 out of 10 type situation. Is it as good as Ghost of Tsushima? This is where I think the game does take some steps back. Atsu grew on me, and actually grew rather fast on me, and she was just kind of a consistent presence of like being really solid, but never incredible. There was maybe sometimes the very end, and it's tough, again, like I can't really get into specifics. There were a couple scenes where it's like, oh yeah, she rocks, or oh, that's a different kind of emotion than I've seen out of her so far. There's a couple times. I'm not going to say it's not there, and I'm not going to say she's a bad character. She's driven by revenge, but the game does as well as it can, and we knew this going in, right? It's a revenge story, but they're going to try to, spice it up. They're going to throw some things in there that maybe make it a little bit more than a basic revenge story. And I will say, I think they do that. It doesn't make it amazing. It makes it a revenge story that we have seen how revenge stories play out, and it adds a little something here and there. There's maybe 3 twists in the entire game, and the twists I think actually are quite powerful, and they do it sparingly, but they actually do it pretty darn well. And it just adds enough, where it's like, okay, everything's well executed. I think I saw an article, Gene Park maybe, when he did his review, where it's like, it's a well executed revenge story. And I think he liked it maybe more than I like it, but I agree with that principle, okay? I think if you know what a revenge story is, this is about as good as it gets, kind of following the guidelines. And they try to throw a couple things in there to keep you on your toes, and it does. It makes you think, oh, okay. I mean, there was one twist, actually the final twist of the entire game. Well, you can maybe say there's 2. One thing I saw coming based off something that a character said, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's going to lead to something, and then lo and behold, it actually did lead to something. So there's some things you can pick up on. You might be able to predict, like, okay, maybe there's more than 3 twists. Maybe there's like 4 or 5. You can probably guess 2 of the 5, 3 of the 5, maybe. You probably can't get all of them, and I think that's a good thing, right? It keeps you like, okay, well, you don't know the entire game before you even play it, but it is a blast. I mean, I would disagree. I think the main story, there are some amazing quests. I think it is the most in-depth of anything. There's a lot more, I think, diversity in the side stuff just because there's a lot of it, and they do better than I thought they were going to do in terms of, like, trying to make it all different from each other, but there's a lot of really great characters in this game. There's probably less of them than there were in Ghost of Tsushima. I also think, and I think I can say this without spoiling it, Lord Saito, okay, who's the leader of the Yotei 6, they plant some seeds in the beginning that there's more to this guy, more to this character, and they give you what those are throughout the game a couple times. Actually, I thought it would be more. I guess I'll be honest and say that. Again, saying it without spoiling it, I wanted more from him. I think, obviously there's kind of 2 villains in Ghost of Tsushima, the surprise one, I guess, being his uncle, right? But the depth that he has and the relationship he has with Jin is obviously different than Lord Saito with Atsu. Like, I understand that, but I do think I prefer that. I think you're seeing with people, like, okay, well, which do you prefer, right? This internal struggle of Jin's or the revenge story of Atsu. I do prefer Jin. I will say that. I'll get more into it. I'll, again, maybe do spoilers, and we can talk about Jin versus Atsu and kind of do that in a separate video. There's nothing wrong with Atsu's story. I think she honestly is a better character than I thought she was going to be. She's a great character. I just don't think she's an amazing character, is I guess kind of how I would put it. And again, in terms of those characters, like, there are some really good ones. They're kind of all tied. Well, maybe not all of them. There's like one that kind of comes back up inside stuff. That's actually pretty cool. And some of the Yotei 6 are actually very interesting to me, but when I think about Ghost of Tsushima, I think about, like, Kenji, right? Like, he's kind of awesome. I think about Yuna, right? Like, there's a lot of side stuff and the side quests that you do with the characters, how there's like 1 out of 9 for some of these people, right? I think they're pretty fulfilling. There's a lot of depth to it, and there's, I think, just less of them in this game than there were in Ghost of Tsushima. So, I mean, it's maybe what you guys have heard before, but I wanted to obviously go way more in depth. The story, it's more than serviceable. I wouldn't even call it like a serviceable story. It is a far above average story. Even though it's a little cliche, it's still far better than average. The characters are far better than average. They're just not amazing. And everything else probably is amazing. This is a phenomenal game. A game that is just so... It has that fun factor. I know we oftentimes, and even myself maybe, right? When we're doing these reviews, I don't use a lot of fancy words because my English is not even all that amazing, but I have a limited vocabulary. But can games be fun? And that's something that I think so many people, kind of want but almost forget to say half the time. This game is a blast to play, and there's more than enough there in the main stuff to keep you going, to keep you invested, whether it's like emotional stuff or just kind of like a really fun story, like an action-y story. There's more than enough stuff there, and then all of the side stuff in the game, you can spend 30, 40, 50 hours and lose those. I mean, I played this game some of these nights. I was playing this game for like 6, 7 hours, and it's like, I could do more. It's just I have to go to bed. The feeling of fun, that's what this game has all throughout it. So easily one of my favorite games of the year. You'll have to wait till the end of the year to find out where I put it in my top, but rest assured, it is in my top 5. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and hope to see you all on the next one.